far.
Okay, we are talking to Portia Sabin and Maggie Vail from Kill Rock Stars. Portia is on the left and Maggie Vail is on the right. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the history of the label?
Kill Rock Stars was started in 1991 by Slim Moon, and it started out as a spoken word label. The first release was a spoken word split 7-inch between Slim Moon and Kathleen Hanna, who went on to be the singer Bikini Kill and La Tigre. And in the early days, the label was known for Riot Girl bands such as Bikini Kill, Bratmobile, and Heaven's to Betsy, XQ17, things like that. And then we went on to have sort of an eclectic career after that. Some of our biggest artists became singer-songwriters like Elliott Smith. We moved into the Decembrists, the Gossip. We have Deerhoof, Shoo. We just have a really eclectic, awesome roster, and next year is our 20th year anniversary, and we're very excited about that.
Why don't you give me some idea of what the two of you do at the label?
We talk about dogs.
Okay, I mean your responsibilities. Okay, I should have worded that differently.
I am the owner of the label. I do A&R, I sign bands. I work with bands, and I do a lot of budgeting and accounting. I pay bills, I pay royalties, I calculate mechanicals. It's very sexy.
You've been identified not just with female artists, but with specifically feminist artists. Do you consider yourselves to be feminists?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Wait, you should say what you do.
Oh, what do I do? I'm the vice president. I do a lot of marketing. I do some A&R as well. A lot of artist development stuff. I'm de facto manager for some bands that I don't get paid for.
When the Riot Girl movement first began, I was kind of surprised at the hostile reaction it got from the fanzine press. I mean, why do you think that was?
I think they pushed a lot of buttons. I mean, they made people really angry because they were really messing with the status quo. It was something that was absolutely necessary to have happen, and the reaction to it sort of proves that was the case.
I specifically remember that some of these bands were accused of reverse sexism by people who otherwise would not talk about, sexism against
neglecting
women.
to notice there was a man in Bikini Kill, et cetera.
Neglecting to notice that the label was run by a man.
Right. Who is a feminist.
Who is a feminist, yeah.
And, of course, another one of your well-known bands was Sleater-Kinney, right?
Yes.
You two were also musicians yourselves, in addition to running the label. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I've played in lots of different bands for the past 18, 20 years. I was in a band on Kill Rock Stars for 7 years called Bangs.
And I played in bands. I started playing in bands when I was 21, and I lived in New York, and the only band that anyone had ever heard of that I played in was called the Hissy Fits.
What can you say the future would be for indie labels like Kill Rock Stars, with major labels sort of imploding? Do you think there's sort of an opening for bands like you, for labels like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I think that the business is changing. The music business is changing in general, and I think indies have lately been sort of uniquely poised to capitalize on that for a lot of reasons, one of which is that we're smaller and more flexible in general. That's not all indies, because there are many very large indies with lots of employees and lots of less flexible, less agile.
Right. We're very streamlined.
But we're a very streamlined company, and a lot of labels that are our size are too, because we have like only 6 employees and everything, I'm the boss. If I read an email and I say we're going to do this, we just do it. It's simple. We don't have to change policies and have a board meeting.
Yeah.
And that's been great in this last few years, because it means that, with declining CD sales but increasing digital sales, we can adjust our practices accordingly. I think that's been really difficult for the majors. They are publicly held companies. They answer to boards of directors. They have, profits they need to make every quarter. And so we definitely have been the beneficiaries, I think, lately of the changes that have happened.
And speaking of online sales, the majors in particular were very slow, I think, to warm up to the idea. What about Kill Rock Stars? How did you approach, these new technologies?
Well, the interesting thing is those big places that started didn't, and still don't. When a big new service starts, they don't come to us. They don't offer us terms. They go straight to the major labels, and they just try to work out those terms. So we kind of have to wait for the slow big 5 or 3 or however many it is now to negotiate those terms, and then we hear what our terms will be, because they're usually not the same.
Right. We got really lucky with A2IM, which is an organization that I'm on the board of. It's the American Association of Independent Music. It's the trade organization for indie labels in America. They lobbied successfully. They worked with iTunes to get the same rate, to get parity for the independent labels with the major labels, and we're very grateful about that. That was really awesome. So now we do make the same rate from iTunes for every download that majors make. I think we were lucky. We got on board. Slim, who owned the company when iTunes started, got us hooked up with a direct deal with iTunes, so that's great. We don't have to go through a digital aggregator for our iTunes, which means we keep that 15% instead of giving it away.
It means we get 70 cents
per 99-cent download instead of 70 cents minus 15%. And that's good for our bands, ultimately.
Yeah.
And finally, I imagine you must hear from fans, specifically female fans, who say, because of Bikini Kill or Sleater-Kinney, I picked up an instrument and now I'm starting a band.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
we
amazing.
hear that all the time.
That's the whole point of what we do, really.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's happened to both of us in our bands, and it happens to the bands that we have on our label all the time, and we love that. We're really pleased that we can offer an inspiration.
Okay, well, thank